Okay, so now we're going to do question 19, and it's from the SAT number 9. So 19 says, according to the figure, the mean correlation that most nearly approaches complete agreement exists between individual self-perception and something. So this is actually kind of a difficult problem, and it's really because the figure is a little bit difficult to understand. But why don't we go to it and see if we can kind of figure out what's going on. Before we do, let's get a sense of what it is that we're looking for. So we're talking about individual self-perception, right? Um, yeah, we're talking about individual self-perception, and we want to compare that self-perception to something else, and we're looking for the mean correlation that most nearly approaches complete agreement. So approaches complete agreement. We want to keep those two things in mind. First, let's get a sense of what the graph is about. So this says mean correlation of perceptions of individuals, blah, blah, blah. All right, there's a lot there. That's not the best way to start to understand this. So this right here is measuring mean correlation. If we remember from the passage, we know that 1 corresponds to when you know something, when there's a strong correlation, meaning it's like almost identical, right? We predict the same things. 0 means there's almost complete disagreement, where my predictions of myself or of you are very different, almost completely different, entirely different from your perception of yourself or whatever. Then we have these 3 columns, A, B, and C. And then within each of these 3 columns, we have 2 separate columns, one for new acquaintances and one for well-acquainted, so close acquaintances. So let's read through each of these, A, B, and C. So A is the correlation between individual self-perception and those individuals' predictions of how others perceive them. This is actually like the hardest one to understand, so let's make sure we get a sense of what it means. So an individual self-perception, that's going to be my perception of myself, and those individuals' predictions of how others perceive them. So this is going to be basically, what do I feel about myself, and then what do I predict that others will view of me, right? So if, for example, I say I think that I am intelligent, I think that I am trustworthy, I think that I am a good friend, how likely am I to say that other people will think I'm intelligent, trustworthy, a good friend, etc.? Right? Then we also have this distinction between new acquaintance and like an old acquaintance, or somebody with whom we're well acquainted. And so if I, for example, let's say like this is right here. Let's say, for example, I think that I'm trustworthy, right? What am I going to say about someone who just meets me? How much they're going to say I'm trustworthy? Are they going to think that I'm trustworthy as I see myself as trustworthy? That's what A is. B is separate. B is the correlation between individual self-perception and actual perception of those individuals by themselves. So this is not comparing my own perception with my own perception of how other people view me. This is comparing my own perception of myself versus how those other people actually view me, based on their own reporting of something else. So this is me saying, yeah, I think I'm pretty smart, pretty intelligent, and then somebody else being like, nah, dude, that guy's not smart. So that would be B. C is the correlation between individuals' predictions of how others perceive them and actual perception of those individuals by others. So, yeah. So this is basically my prediction of how you'll think about me versus your prediction versus what you actually think about me. So instead of my understanding of myself versus how you understand me, this is my prediction of how you understand me versus how you actually understand me. There are very slight, subtle differences, and it can be confusing. We can actually answer this question even without fully understanding what's going on, although the comprehension certainly makes it a lot easier. So again, let's go back here. So we're looking about a correlation between individual self-perception, right, and something else. So if we notice down here, we have individual self-perception only mentioned for A and B. So this is going to be, because C is about individuals' predictions of how others perceive them versus those actual predictions. So the only ones that talk about an individual self-perception are A and B. And we're looking for the correlation that most nearly approaches complete agreement. So when we're looking at the graph, if we're looking for the correlation, it's not going to be the ones that match, right? We might think that at first, right? Oh, these ones kind of match, so maybe they're in agreement with each other. We're actually going to be paying attention to this axis here. If we remember correlation, what correlation means is that, that's pretty cool. I like that. What correlation means is that when two things are in complete agreement, you're going to approach 1. So you're going to go from 0 all the way up to 1. So we're actually going to be looking for really the tallest column, which is going to be this column here. This column here is approaching complete agreement, right? Because we have a correlation close to 1. It's about a little over 9, or about just at 0.9. And this is the column in A, which is the correlation between individual self-perception, how I view myself, and the individual's predictions of how others perceive them. So my predictions about how you'll perceive me. We also notice that it's for the well-acquainted. So this is basically the one that's in most agreement is my view of myself versus my prediction of how somebody who knows me will view me. So if I predict that I'm trustworthy, I'm going to predict that somebody who knows me very well will also think that I'm trustworthy, right? Which kind of makes sense. So we're going to look for the answer choice that matches that. A says the complete agreement exists between individual self-perception and how those individuals are actually perceived by new acquaintances. So here we're talking about the distinction between self-perception and actual perception, which is not what we want. We want self-perception versus prediction. And then we're also talking about well-acquaintance people, so people who know us well, not new acquaintances. So for that reason, A is wrong. B says actual perception of those individuals by people with whom they are well acquainted. Actual perceptions of those individuals by people with whom they are well acquainted. So we have the well acquainted part, which works pretty good. But we're looking for the correlation between self-perception and prediction of others, not self-perception and actual perceptions of those people. So for that reason, we'll get rid of B. C says the individual's predictions of how they are perceived by people with whom they are well acquainted. So this is my prediction, my perception of myself versus how I think that somebody who knows me really well will feel about me. That's what C is saying. And that really is the one that we found up here, right? That's the one that we found here. That it's well acquainted for A, self-perception, and those individual predictions of how others perceive them. So that's pretty much probably going to be our answer choice because that matches perfectly. And then D says the prediction those individuals make about how they are perceived by new as well as old acquaintances. So this is almost like C, except now we're talking about old and like well acquaintance people and new acquaintances, and that would be almost as if these two columns were the same. But we notice there's a big difference between the new acquaintances and the well acquainted. So for that reason, D is going to be out as well, which is going to leave us with answer choice C for our correct answer here.